This is also real.
This is also real. This is real life.
Real
All right, cool.
All right.
So, this is Ryan Lantaigne. He's a judge for Formula D, and I want you to tell us a little about yourself and how you got to be a judge at Formula D.
How did I get to be a judge? So I competed up in Canada. Well, first I worked for the Canadian series from day one. Helped organize, get all the drivers ready and all that. At one point they needed somebody to do demos for Yokohama. I was out playing around, they said, you do it. So I don't know how I got chosen to do this. I went out and did my little demos in my Skyline. I got noticed the full year that I did my demos, started competing. From there I judged because I lost all my sponsors. I'm sure people can relate to that. I judged in Canada for 1 year. Tony Angelo was up there helping me out at the time, being a judge. And he said at the end of that season, we needed somebody to come down to the States, to FD. So he invited me down. I got an interview with Jim and Ryan, and I got the position. So thanks to Tony Angelo. He's actually the guy that got me here.
Tony's been helping everybody.
Yeah, he has.
Half the people here, yeah, just go work for those guys.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, I'm out. I'm not driving anymore. I'm gonna do hot rod TV shows now.
Yeah, be a cool guy.
Yep. So you've been traveling the States and all over the world for drifting. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing and why you're there and what kind of different things you're involved with?
So, starting off with FD in the US in 2011, didn't have a lot of opportunity to travel, but that slowly happened. We did FD Japan. And when I started doing that, people said, oh, he's traveling around a little bit, started getting contacted. Now I get to go around and do judging seminars all over the world. I've been in Europe quite a bit doing that, and still doing FD Japan judging, and of course FD US. So it's gotten me around, judging some events in Europe as well, HGK. I'm going to be doing Gottville this year as well as their judge, so I'm having a lot of fun traveling.
Cool, and then you do some driving in Japan as well, right?
Yes, I have a car there at Ebisu, which I know is a funny thing that the Driftcast guys like to make fun of me for, but anyway, her name's Jacqueline, she's a JZX90. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I was just recently over there. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's too bad our schedules didn't line up a little bit better.
We need to make it over there at the same time so we can thrash together some. But yeah, it's a wild place to drive.
It is. It's still the Wild West of drifting.
It is cool. Yeah. I got to drive some JZXs there too. Mostly a Laurel that
I watched your videos.
Quite a bit of fun with there. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. And as far as like judging in Japan and judging in these other countries and even the seminars, like what are some things that stand out with those things that maybe the viewers may not know about?
Oddly enough, everybody's starting to adapt the FD judging style, if you will. They've been asking me to come over and introduce it, train their judges, show the drivers what it's all about. For some reason, people really like the way we do things here at FD. A lot of guys do different things differently around the world, but the FD way of judging is really catching on in a big way. We started doing it at FD Japan. Originally, it was the first time we've kind of implemented outside of the US. Now we've got not all of Europe, a lot of places in Europe. So I was just in Norway. They're going to start using it in all the Scandinavian championships there, so Norway and Sweden as well. I was in the Baltic area, so they're going to start using the FD style as well. So that's Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia as well. And they have more planned for me to go and do some of these little seminars to start training, getting more people involved. So that's been really interesting, but just to see everybody's passion for the sport all around the world. I got a lot of people saying, oh, we watch the drift stream all the time. It's really great to see you on the drift stream. So I'm not trying to toot FD's horn here, but we're really making an impact on drifting around the world, which is pretty cool.
And do you think some of that is because those guys inspire to come drive this series and they want to start adopting those things early so they can get more familiar with it? Or do you think it's just because they're looking for that way to have a centered and organization type deal?
A lot of it, from what they tell me, is they want to have a way to judge that's more fair. Right now they have systems that are maybe a little bit biased, not towards one driver, but towards a specific style of driving. They want something that's a little bit more fair for everybody, and they want something that's a little easier to understand for the fans, a little bit easier to understand for the drivers as well and the teams.
Gotcha.
And they really like our system, the way that we've developed it, and they want to implement it for those main reasons, they tell me.
Gotcha. So I know we touched on you driving a little bit, but how do you think that affects your judging in a positive way or negative? And also, like, what your driving points are, do they affect how, or do you guys chat between judges to kind of affect that overall?
So driving, I think, just gives me a better idea of what's going on in the car, what it takes to do what the drivers are doing. I'm not driving at the level that you guys are driving at here, but driving nonetheless with you guys. Like, I drive with a lot of FD guys in Japan that come over, and seeing how they drive, I think gives me a different perspective than the other guys. Andy used to compete. Andy's been in the FD since pretty much day one, right? But he hasn't competed, he hasn't driven in a while. He brings a lot of experience from what he's done over the years. Brian brings in experience from his organizational side, and he's been involved in drifting for a long time as well. But I think the driving side gives me a different perspective. And
yeah, you're no slouch behind the wheel either.
Well, thank you.
Don't discredit yourself too much.
I get input from Brian on certain things when we're in the tower, and I get input from Andy as well. Like, Andy has the most keen eye that I think I've ever seen for catching things on the track that we miss sometimes.
Gotcha.
And he'll bring it up and say, hey, we should watch the replay because I think I saw something here. Things that Brian and I might have thought we saw, or maybe we didn't even notice at all. So Andy's really, really good for that kind of stuff. And I think that that's why we work so well together. How much do we communicate up there? Sometimes it's just a, hey, did you see that? Maybe the other guy will say, yeah, I saw it. And then that's it. It's kind of like, hey, I hope you didn't miss this.
Right.
Take this into consideration. It doesn't mean you have to go the same way as I do, but at least, make sure you see it.
Right.
We don't talk about what we're gonna judge, how we're gonna judge. It'll be like little things like that. Hey, I think I saw something here. Can you confirm that you also saw it? Let's watch this replay, check it out.
Right.
In between in between battles, so once a battle's done, we've input our scores, there is some time up there usually, between runs. Before, even when we input our scores and when it goes up on the screen, there's time. So we'll start bullshitting a little bit. Hey, oh, did you see this? Did you see that? Oh, you really screwed up there or whatever.
Gotcha.
We're drift fans too, so when we're up there, we're talking just like you guys are probably talking at home about the driving, about the drifting.
There's a lot of talking.
Yeah, there's a lot of BSing up there. We make fun of drivers a lot between ourselves.
That's part of the dynamic of the sport, because there's like 3,000 things that happen in 3 turns.
Exactly, right? And because we're fans too, we can't turn that part of our brains off. We're still going to do it. We just do it privately amongst ourselves.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. And then as far as qualifying and delegating those points, can you give me like an idea of inner and outer zones and what they're normally worth, and then certain parts of the track like touch and goes and outer zones, and actually the entire run itself with style and angle? Can you give me some ideas on what you guys are looking for that is the same at every track?
So we have it broken down into 3 main categories, right? We have angle and line, which are worth 35 points each. And then you look at the style portion, or the style will have IFC, so impact, fluidity, and commitment. That's worth 30. They're all worth 10 each. That's going to be the same at every track we go to. Now, the way we lay the track out is going to be different. If you look at Long Beach track, we have a touch and go to start, an outside zone right here, another outside zone, another touch and go, inside clip, and then you're done. So it depends on the track. We might have 5 scored areas on one track, we might have 7 on another track, but we still have the same 100 points, so we have to break up. So the 35 points for line and angle need to be broken up in those 5 or 7 points, or areas on the track. And it's going to depend on how we want to direct the drivers, where we want you guys to be on the track. So if we want you to get out to that wall, as we do here in Long Beach, the first wall, we don't need you to ride the whole thing. We just want to make sure you get out wide. That's why we put a touch and go. You can get out wide to it wherever you want within that zone, as long as you get out there. And then we've got our zones that need to be fully filled. So it really depends on what our needs are, depending on how the track is set up.
Gotcha. And then you guys also have lines on the inner clips. Are you guys doing those again this year to kind of help you guys be able to see how far you are from it?
As long as we're allowed to paint.
Gotcha.
Here, unfortunately, because it's an IndyCar track, we're not allowed to paint. They're pretty tight with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think every other track we go to, we're wide open for painting, so we do as much as we can.
Gotcha.
It helps us judge, because we get to see exactly how close or far away the car is. It helps the fans see what's going on, and I think it helps the drivers and teams as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So at some tracks, you can obviously, there's spots where you can pass. Can you explain, like, not necessarily specifically at what track it is, but what are the circumstances that are needed to be made in order to be passed?
So a legal pass should only be performed at an inside clip. You're not allowed to make a pass on an outside zone. Okay. So first of all, the car that's performing the pass needs to be making the pass on the inside, so in front of the car that's being passed. That's for safety reasons. You don't want to be trying to perform a pass behind. You don't know what's going on behind you. Most of the time, you're looking at where you're going.
Right.
So for safety reasons and of course just trying to keep things fair, so everybody's in the same spot and mentality where they can and can't pass. Passing is only done at inside clips. And it's only done when the lead car is so far offline that the chase car can maintain the proper line and make the pass happen and continue drifting, essentially. At that point, the chase car becomes the lead car, The lead car then becomes a chase. If he doesn't spin and go off track, he can kind of resume drifting and follow for the rest of the course.
Gotcha.
When a pass is performed, the lead driver will automatically win that particular run.
Okay.
The chase driver will automatically lose that particular run.
And at what point during that pass has the follow car taken the lead?
It'll be when he has gotten the front of his car in front of the other car going through the corner.
Gotcha.
So a lot of things can happen in that situation, right? And that's why we say it's not mandatory to pass if that happens. If you want to go for it and make it happen, you still run the risk of that chase car being able to kind of come back in and it could be contact. And then you're leaving it in our hands to look at it and decide who was at fault, which we don't like to do, and I'm sure the drivers don't like that either. We have passing in place because it's exciting, it's good for the fans, it's fun for the drivers, and it gives the drivers an opportunity to take those chances on track. And we've seen some great passes that were performed properly. I think it was at Osbo on Forsberg at Atlanta a couple of years ago.
Right.
That was the textbook pass. That's the situation that we made the rules for. I know you had an odd pass here last year.
I was actually going to touch on that. I didn't want to put you on the spot.
No, yeah.
Like, I would like that explained for my own good. Like, that was like, obviously he had crashed and made a mistake. That was pretty fast. And even though I don't have an inner clip, like, I kind of had nowhere to go.
Yeah, that's exactly how we saw it as well.
Okay.
So in that situation, so to break it down, we always look at the lead of your lead against the other driver's lead, chase against chase. So let's say that your pass wasn't 100% legal. Let's say that it was a little iffy. Even though he did hit the wall and was straightening up, on his I guess it was his chase lap, he actually straightened up.
Yep.
And I think it was a spin almost at the
spin,
very last corner, right? So chase to chase, I would say that your avoidance of a potential crash outdid his spin, right?
Gotcha.
And then lead to lead, he hit the wall in his lead, you had a really good lead. So even if I was to deduct in my head maybe a little bit for your pass that wasn't completely legal, it was done for the right reason.
Right.
You were avoiding a crash that could have potentially taken you both into the wall, and you were just trying to stay on throttle. So yeah,
Gotcha.
That's kind of how I look at it.
Cool. Yeah, I always kind of wondered that because I was like, they could definitely run us one more time here because
For sure.
I'm so glad that he spun on the last turn because now at least I know I didn't lose.
And that's another reason why we took away a lot of the rules that we had in place before. You remember what it was like. It was ultra strict. Anytime that anything was done on that list, it was an automatic 0 or it was an automatic, you're done. And we felt that our hands were tied so many times because of that, battles that we should have gone one way with, we couldn't because the rules were written the other way.
Right.
And now that they're so free, so to speak, we have the opportunity that we can look at those situations and make I think, like a level-hedded, fair call.
Gotcha. It makes
situationally,
sense. For sure. I do feel that it was better with a little bit looser of rules.
Yeah.
Because then it's, it's more open for interpretation, but that's also more open for interpretation for you guys.
Exactly. I mean,
So
some guys will call us idiots for the calls that we make, but I think in the most, like the drift guys, the true drift people that are your fans that are watching, they're going to go, okay, I understand why. It makes sense.
Right.
Instead of sticking to rules that are written in concrete and you can't change, so.
Yeah, I mean, I've also been doing videos kind of explaining like what I thought the score was going to be, and I'm usually within 1 or 2 points of what all 3 of you guys are doing. So like, obviously you guys are on the right path, and that's what I'm trying to explain to people. Everyone's like, oh, that run was a 97, and you're like, well, it wasn't because of these right here.
Right.
And even when I'm wrong, there's an explanation of that will say, well, this is why, and so it's always good to see that. I think people just miss that end.
Right, and I think that's another reason why people internationally are looking at our rules and going, okay, these make sense.
Yeah.
They work.
For sure.
In practice, and I think that's why it's so successful.
Yeah. Cool. And then, so obviously we were just talking about contact and maybe accidents and things like that. So on the track, obviously it's part of drifting. There's some door rubbing and maybe banging per se. Everybody likes to say how cool it is when they're smashing their door in and whatnot. But what kind of draws the line on like an impact that affected the lead car or something like that to maybe validate a shutdown from the lead car or validate you guys, giving him a negative on that end?
So we look at where the contact happened on that lead car. So if the chase car hit the back corner of the lead car, you'd expect the lead car to spin, right? Because it would make him over rotate. But if that contact happens and the lead car then drives straight off track, you have to kind of look at that and say, well, why is he driving straight off? Why would that hit in the rear cause him to go straight? It shouldn't, right? Whereas situations where we've had a lead driver get hit in his front wheel, by the other driver's front wheel. So wheel-to-wheel contact, which should yank the wheel right out of his hand, that I say that's totally justified for that driver straightening up. Right. So we try to look at it situationally, what happened, what occurred, what part of the car got hit, and what was the outcome from that contact. Did the outcome make sense? And sometimes you have to give one driver, I guess, the benefit of the doubt that when they got hit, it was a legitimate issue that caused them to straighten up or whatever it might be. But it's not easy. It's difficult because you're trying to put yourself in the car, right? And driving can help with that. You know, the fact that I do drift gives me an idea of what, but it's basic knowledge that if you get hit in the back, you should over-rotate, not under.
Sure. So using the physics of obviously.
Physics, yeah, and you're trying to put yourself in the driver's shoes, right? But that's not always easy.
Yeah. My
silly car, my JZX 90 doesn't react the same way that your competition car does, right? My car wants to be loose all the time. Your cars probably want to be a little bit more tight. They want to straighten up if you get off the throttle. So it's thinking about all those different things and looking at each situation independently. And yeah, we're going to get it wrong from time to time. Right. We do our best with the information that we're given, and you're going to have one driver saying one thing and the other driver saying the other. So I can't rely on those guys to help me out. So it's really tough sometimes. You're relying on your memory from when you saw it live, and also some replays that are sometimes at some awkward angles depending on where it occurs. So
right, and also like on and off throttle sections that you guys have dictated to in the past.
And that's something that helps us a lot. Right. The Excel decel map now that just gives us the tools we need to say for sure he shouldn't have done that there as a lead driver. Yeah, he got hit, but he shouldn't have been doing that there.
On the gas there, or
exactly.
At least maintaining his speed.
Exactly.
Right, for sure. So obviously we want to go out there and scrape the wall all the way around, be super gangster, and do the most ignorant run we can, ripping wings off and all that stuff. But is there a point where that doesn't necessarily gain any more points in the angle and the style and the line? So
getting out to the wall, it depends how you got there, first of all, right? So in the commitment side, it's using throttle, using momentum. If you're e-braking and kind of like trying to drag the car out there, not using your speed and momentum, even if you rip every panel on the car and don't bobble, it's not going to really matter because your approach was poor.
Right.
So that's the first thing, is the setup. How did you get there? I wouldn't say ripping panels off or bumpers or anything like that gives you a bonus, but being able to scrape the whole wall like you did here last year, I believe it was, and rip your spoiler off, but keep going. Yeah, for sure. Your commitment's going to be super high, and your fluidity as well. Like all those things are going to be good because of that. As long as you had good angle, your angle score is going to do well. But I wouldn't say ripping panels off gives you an advantage. We don't have anywhere in there to give any more points for that type of thing. We don't have like an extra bonus that you can give for those things. So you're stuck with impact fluidity, initiation, fluidity, and commitment, and we're kind of tied in that bubble. So
gotcha.
Yeah. Getting out there is obviously what you want to do.
Right. So if you have like the perfect run as far as like getting in the zone and staying in it all the way through it, and you just nick the bumper on the wall, or if you do the exact same run with the same exact type of deal, but like 8 inches deeper and the wing and all that comes off, like you're already getting max points.
Exactly.
It just looks cool.
Looks cool. The fans go nuts.
Right. So that being the point, like you guys haven't given a perfect run in like 7 or 8 years. I don't think you have ever actually. It was previous judges, right?
Yeah.
So what is the reasoning for maybe not being able to have a 100-point run?
So if you look at our individual scoring, we score different things on each event. So we rotate through, right? So I'll be style here, but next run I'll be angle, and then I'll be line, and then it rotates back through. If you look at the scoring itself independently, at one event you might have style be perfect for one driver on one run, but there might be little things, line or angle, that were deducted throughout. So I believe that when they got the 100-point run, the judges were judging the entire run themselves, right? So each individual judge was looking at the entire run, giving a score, and they just went, you know what, that's 100. And scoring was different back then. It wasn't as technical, it wasn't as in-depth, and I don't think the driving was to the level that it is today either. So sometimes you get really close. Like you'll get maybe a perfect line score and a perfect style, but maybe the angle, a couple of points knocked off. And it's happened. We've had some 97s, I think some 98s. It's close, but there's always something. Now that we're looking at individual criteria, there's always something you can find that, oh, you could have done better there, you could have done better there, a little something there. So that's what it ends up coming down to. It's not that drivers aren't pushing to that level anymore. They're pushing beyond, I think, what we were back then, but the sport has just progressed, and so have we.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time, man.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.